Welcome to the deep dive, first one. I am your host, Detective Trogdor, and I am in a room with absolutely terrible lighting and no sound dampening whatsoever. So we're just going to roll with it and learn on the fly. Today we are going to talk about a somewhat little known holiday, but at the same time, a lot of people do know about it, and those that do know about it are kind of like, they kind of laugh and scoff, but they don't know the truth about it. And that is Groundhog's Day. So you can see I'm joined by Punxsutawney Phil right up here, and he's going to help me tell you the history and origins of this little famous Pennsylvania holiday that has been spread worldwide. So Groundhog's Day is an annual celebration of the perceived end of winter on February 2nd, where people gather around to determine if we are going to have an early spring or we're going to have 6 more weeks of winter-like weather. Now, the most famous celebration is held in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, which is in the northern, from what I remember, northern area of Pennsylvania. On February in Pennsylvania, it's relatively cold. Temperatures can go anywhere from 42 degrees Fahrenheit to like negative 10 Fahrenheit, which for all you people that use a reasonable sense of temperature, that's 5.5 down to negative 23 Celsius. The earliest recorded celebration of Groundhog's Day can be traced back as far as 1886, and that is the first noted one, while you can actually trace it back even farther to the first time that the was kind of observed, which was written in the diary of James L. Morgan of Morgantown, Pennsylvania, when he wrote in his diary that they pretty much observed what they call Groundhog's Day. Now, Groundhog's Day can go by another different names. Since it came over from Germany with the Pennsylvania Dutch, it goes by, and I'm going to try because I took Spanish in high school, and that's about it. Like I only took 2 years of it, so bear with me. Groundhog, or Groundhog, or Grunzendog, or Mermeltiertag, which all those I'm assuming based off of is like different variations of Groundhog and Mermeltiertag. The groundhog is what's called a marmot, which is part of the rodent family, which we'll get into in a little bit. February 2nd, which is most notably known as Groundhog's Day, as I discussed before, is also known in the Christian faith as Candlemass, which I did not know was an actual holiday until I started researching this. And apparently it's when essentially the sunlight is starting to become more prevalent in the winter months, so people are like seeing it as like, oh, we're getting more sunlight coming around, so they take their candles to church to be blessed. Don't know why, but that's not for me to really dive too much into. And as with most Christian holidays, it's actually supposed to have pretty much ignored the pagan holiday of Imbolc, or Imbolc. So go ahead, you can look that one up too. But it's the celebration of light and agricultural fertility. So meaning it's pretty much they're celebrating the fact that winter's almost over and we're getting more sunlight and we're ready to start farming and whatnot. So how does this all tie back into Groundhog's Day? Well, Groundhog's Day started off as a myth, essentially, in Germany, where they believed that when the animals came out of the ground, when more sunlight started coming out of hibernation, so that ties into the fact that they are getting ready to just have spring come early. Now, if we're going to go into details about what the different meanings of the animals coming out of the ground is going to be, but so they come out of the ground means that we're probably going to have an early spring, so we're going to start to be able to farm and whatnot. So why was a groundhog chosen? So many times, like I said before, when the Germans came over and then became the Pennsylvania Dutch, they wanted to continue this celebration of Imbolc, or Groundhog's Day, that they had over there, and they were using their fauna in Germany, which from what I read was bears, foxes, could be hedgehogs, which I for some reason never thought of the idea that hedgehogs were never just a domesticated animal. They were actually wild at one point, when still are kind of. But they adapted to the local fauna of Pennsylvania being groundhogs or any kind of like large rodents coming out of the ground. So, what happens when the groundhog comes out of the ground? Now, according to legend, if a groundhog comes out of the ground and sees a shadow and is scared and runs back into his hole, that means we're going to have 6 more weeks of winter-like weather. However, if the groundhog comes out of the ground and does not see a shadow and scared back in, that means we're having an early spring. This is obviously based off of no actual science. This is all kind of old wives' tale, old, like, hand down mythic legends and lore about how we can predict weather. But this is also started at a time when, they had no concept that electricity was a natural occurrence. They thought it was like a wrath of God. So, kind of made sense that they could use this kind of real loose definition of weather telling. Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. Like I said, biggest celebration across the globe. And we'll go into other tiny minor celebrations that happen mostly in North America. But the number one, the one that is mostly talked about, the one that is featured in the Bill Murray movie Groundhog's Day, is taking place in a little town called Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. More specifically, at an area called Gobbler's Knob. We'll get into that name in a little bit too, but yes, I agree, it's definitely a name. A few hours before the sun rises, people are gathering at Gobbler's Knob to participate in all different kinds of activities, such as food vendors, you get souvenirs, there's music, there's dancing, everyone's having a good time. Now, granted, like I said, it's relatively cold, and it's also in the morning, so there's no sunlight, so it can be pretty cold. Now, sunrise is predicted most times at 7:25 a.m., and that is when the festivities officially can begin, i.e. when Phil will actually see his shadow. The groundhog is known as Punxsutawney Phil, which people are speculating on why he was named Phil, and we'll come into that part later. So Gobbler's Knob this name is up for debate. It's one of two things. Either it is it's named after the fact that a lot of turkeys congregated in that area before they made it into their ceremonial ground. So they named it after the gobbling that turkeys would make, which, sure. Or the other one is, this one I'm less on board with and it does not make as much sense. But it's the traditional act of gobbling up woodland critters after a hunt, which to me makes absolutely no sense. But in reflection, not a lot of this makes any sense. It started as a pagan holiday where, you're getting more sunlight. And so that means that like it's about time to start like farming and everything. Everybody's happy about it. Then turn into blessing your candles at the church or something like that, to looking for animals coming out of the woods. And if they're scared by their shadows, you're going to have like more winter or whatever. None of this is scientific fact. All of this is folklore, all of it is mythos, and all of it is phenomenal. I love every second of it. I have been to Gobbler's Knob. I truck around the town of Punxsutawney with a couple of my friends back when we were in high school, and it is one of the most unique, quirky little towns in Pennsylvania, and I am looking forward to giving myself the opportunity in the future of going back there. And if I'm still recording YouTube videos by then, I definitely will be doing some kind of special for that. So at sunrise, the president of the Inner Circle will go up to Phil's temporary home in Gobbler's Knob, which is a large, constructed, not real, tree stump with little doors on the front. And he'll take his ceremonial ancient acacia wooden cane and tap on the door to awaken Phil, at which point he reaches in and he grabs the groundhog and pulls it out and then holds it up and then listens to what the groundhog has to say. The groundhog only speaks to the president of the Inner Circle, and only the president can understand him, and they speak in Groundhogese. Yeah, so that's probably why no one can understand, because it's spoken in Groundhogese. Once the president has finished deciphering the message in Groundhogese, the president will then address the vice president, who chooses from two pre-written messages, because you can't really know whether they're going to have 6 weeks early or 6 weeks late spring. So he's going to tell the vice president to have the prepared message for the appropriate prediction, and then the vice president will read to the crowd that's gathered out there, which is usually some 40,000 people in Pennsylvania, as well as its live stream. So if you really want to, you can actually watch it happen live, or just watch little clips, because, I mean, you get the same energy. At least not these last 2 years, because COVID. Punxsutawney Phil Cannon is apparently a real area of knowledge. I did not know that there could be any storytelling that goes outside the fact, but anyway, according to the Punxsutawney Phil canon, there is only one Punxsutawney Phil. There's not that he's died and we've replaced him with a younger version. Not that he's, we pass the torch to another one, whatnot. There's only one. There only ever has been one since back in 1886 when we first started recording this. Now, in the wild, groundhogs can live for an estimated 6 years, and in captivity, they go from 10 to 15 years. So Phil has been doing this for well over 100 years. He's well over 100 years. I'm not doing the math right now. The way that they can justify saying that Phil is immortal, essentially, is that every fall at the end of summer festival, they give Phil Groundhog Punch, which is their equivalent elixir of life to him, so that he can sustain and go on to another, give his weather we'll look up that word later. I'll just put it like right up here, and then you can read it. But yeah, so apparently he's been the same one since 1886. So Phil's name, why is Punxsutawney Phil named Punxsutawney Phil? Obviously the first part is the town in which these activities take place, but Phil, people have still debated it to this day, and right now the current consensus is that he is named after Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. Which, why? Even in 1886, why would you choose that to be... I'm sorry, not 1886. Actually, 1961. Still doesn't make it any better, because he was born in 1921, so he'd technically be 40 years before he was even born to name him that. But, why name it after the Prince... England. PETA, throwing their hat into the ring on this one, suggests that we stop using a live groundhog, which, I mean, you kind of expect that from them at this point. But they don't want us to use a live groundhog, saying it's putting them under unnecessary stress and anguish, which to a degree I can see that. I wouldn't say like it's really out of the realm of like just being handled in general. But they suggested that we use a robotic groundhog, which is just... feel like we have movies about robots taking over. Now you want to throw groundhog, like animatronic groundhogs into the mix. No thanks. The Inner Circle claims that Phil's predictions are 100% accurate. They have even made claims that the reason why their predictions are inaccurate is because maybe the handler is misinterpreting what Phil is saying to him in Groundhogese, because I guess it has such a thick dialect that they have a really hard time understanding it, which is the one person appointed to understand can't get it. So now they're claiming that it has an 80% accuracy of what is written down. However, the actual numbers in real life were going between 35 to 41% of actual accuracy. Phil has predicted that we are going to have 6 more weeks of winter. Tying back to remember that 6 more weeks of winter means that he saw his shadow and ran back in on days that it was so overcast that there was no sunlight, no shadows were cast in the first place. So kind of a bold claim for Phil to make that, he saw a shadow on that day. Because, come on. no son, like, you could have done a little more research that day. You couldn't have just swapped the envelopes real quick. Other fun fact, I don't know where else to throw this in. It'll kind of come in later, but so like I was saying, Pennsylvania Punxsutawney is the most popular, most prevalent celebration of Punxsutawney Phil and, you know, Groundhog's Day and whatnot. There are many places around the country, in Canada too, that celebrate this. However, the one of the biggest controversies so far I've read with regards to Phil is that Sun Prairie, Wisconsin, started doing their own. From what I can understand, it started doing their own celebrations and whatnot, and they started, I guess, getting like real big hubbub because I guess what else is there to do in Wisconsin? Take that, Mark Bueller. So the Punxsutawney Spirit in 1952. So mind you, this was before Phil was even named. The Punxsutawney Spirit declared that Sun Prairie, Wisconsin, and I quote, is a remote 2-cow village buried somewhere in the wilderness. And they took such offense to that they just went right ahead and said, we are the groundhog capital of the world. Which, I mean, with Sun Prairie, I think more meerkats, but I guess groundhogs are a lot more, not meerkats, prairie dogs, that's it. More prevalent out there. But hey, bold claim. Apparently it's like actually like documented, like it's like the state's like their town like slogan. It's in like the U.S. National Registry that it is now. So I guess they won out on that one. But now we're gonna go into other notable groundhogs. There's Gus, the groundhog. He is Pennsylvania's second most famous groundhog, being known as the mascot for the Pennsylvania State Lottery. I remember when I was growing up and seeing commercials and he would like come on the screen, I was like, what the hell am I seeing right now? Because I guess they took Peter's advice and they made a robotic gopher, and it was scary. I mean, maybe it was a puppet. Regardless, it was nowhere near real. But his slogan was "Keep on scratching" in regards to, you know, scratch off lottery tickets. Not nearly as popular as Phil, but he's up there in terms of weirdness. But then again, how can you really argue with weirdness of Pennsylvania when we have Gritty for the Flyers? So, Balzac Billy. I wish I knew the proper way to say that, but I'm a child at heart, so Balzac Billy it is. He is the Prairie Prognosticator. There it is. Prognosticator of Balzac, Alberta, Canada. This one is probably one of my favorite ones, though, of the non-actual Phil, is because he's not even a groundhog. He's just a guy in a costume. So props to you, Canada, on this one. Buckeye Chuck, which I'm officially right here saying that he is the great value version of Punxsutawney Phil, because Buckeye, Ohio. He's from Marion, Ohio, and he started weather prediction in the 1970s, and he's the official groundhog of Ohio as of 1974, which I don't know why these things happen, why they become official. I kind of feel like it's inferred right away. It's not like there's some guy like in his backyard and he's raising groundhogs and he's like, these are the official groundhogs of Ohio. No one's going for that mantle. So good for you, Buckeye Bill. Fred Lamarmotte, or I'll just spell it right up here for you people that understand French. Located in, yet again, another French word right here, please, which is near Percé, Quebec, Canada. He is the only groundhog whose habitat is located in a World Habitat Site, which that's pretty cool, I guess. So Fred, the first one, his name was, and yet again, this is French, so it's Gros, so I'm going to assume it's Gross Fred, because of my understanding of kind of how Latin works with, you know, the different languages. So Gross Fred, I'm assuming means Big Fred, and he was the groundhog from 2010 to 2017, and then again in 2019. And his son, Petite Fred, was the groundhog of 2018. I didn't do too much research beyond Phil after this, so whatever's on Wikipedia is what you're getting right now. Because, I mean, why would you? But, I mean, Petite Fred, Small Fred, Gross Fred, Big Fred, kind of makes sense to me at this point. General Beauregard Lee. Now, that one's not bad. He is a prognosticator for the American South, and he's located in Georgia somewhere. I guess for some reason I didn't feel like it was necessary to write down the town, but I'll do some after video and put the town right up here. Right there. That's a good one. He is preceded by General Robert E. Lee, which for those that don't know, and it's American Civil War history, General Robert E. Lee led the Confederate forces against the Union troops in the American Civil War, which he is quite a person. General Robert E. Lee, the Groundhog, lived from 1981 to 1991, and the reason he retired was because he was too fat to do his duties. I guess they couldn't lift him anymore. And then Beauregard started his service in 1991, but so that was 30 years ago. I'm gonna take a stab at saying Beauregard is dead yet again. I don't want Beauregard, Lee, or Robert E. Lee coming up on my search histories. I'm sure I'm already flagged as an insane person for doing this much research on Groundhog's Day. But seriously, though. This one's Nova Scotia, so I don't know much about anything north of, like, New York, kinda. So whatever happens beyond there, I'm just assuming it's French-Canadian, even though I know Quebec is, like, the only, like, French-Canadian part, really. But we're gonna go with this one. Shubenacadie Sam. We're calling him Shuby Sam. Lives in Shubenacadie Wildlife Park, Nova Scotia. He began his service in 1987, and since then there have been 4 iterations of him as of 2018. Like I said before, so that's 10 to 15 years of like a life in captivity. So those numbers, you know, they check out pretty well. You know, granted 10 to 15 is probably like the higher end of it. Because of Nova Scotia's relation to all the other ones with when their sunlight happens, they are actually the first ones to predict weather on Groundhog's Day because they are the furthest east in the United States. Well, sorry, in North America. Not United States, North America. Staten Island Chuck is on Staten Island. This one's spicy. Okay, so he's also known as Charles G. Hogg, and he lives in the Staten Island Zoo in New York. In 2009, Staten Island Chuck bit Mayor Michael Bloomsburg while he was being handled. I don't know what provoked him to, other than being a groundhog in captivity and being handled by a stranger, essentially, because the handlers are actually trained professionals, whereas Mayor Michael Bloomsburg is literally to this groundhog just some guy, and he picks him up, so he bit his finger. So they quietly retired him after that, and they replaced him with his not Michael Bloomberg, but Staten Island Chuck's granddaughter, Charlotte. So Charlotte took over for Staten Island Chuck, or Charles G. Hogg. So Charlotte, middle initial Hogg, is now the reigning supreme groundhog of Staten Island. In 2014, however, on Groundhog's Day, February 2nd, Mayor Bill de Blasio proceeded to pick up Charlotte and hold it for the crowd and show it to the children, and bit her. She bit his finger, and he proceeded to drop her in front of a bunch of kids. So the kids are panicked and screaming. You know, the mayor just dropped the groundhog, which those things weigh, I'm going to take a guess just by looking at them. They weigh at least 30 pounds. They are a toddler. Drops it, hits the ground. The handlers come in, rush in, go pick it up and take a whisk her away. I'm guessing they read whatever prosignation or whatever the frick that word is. February 9th, 2014, Charlotte was pronounced dead of acute internal injuries. Mayor Bill de Blasio, you murdered her. Since then, Mayor Bill de Blasio has not shown up to any of the, any of the Groundhog's Day festivities for obvious reasons. After that, Charlotte's daughter took over. So they have a family history of weather prediction, I guess. That's cool. Stormy marmot, which is a yellow-bellied marmot, is the I'll put a picture of it right here. Is the mascot of Aurora, Colorado. Faithful, wrong way. Yep, this way. Faithful Phil fanatics despise Stormy because she is. I'm gonna say it is a. It's not a groundhog. It's actually just a rodent, for lack of better words. That's all that I can find on that. Without, like I said, I don't want to do too much groundhog research because at a certain point, what are you doing with your life? However, there is another one in Colorado. His name is Flatiron Freddy. So there you go. There's another little fact you can have. If you live in Colorado, that's for you. Wearton Willie is a groundhog in Wearton, which is in Bruce County, Ontario. He dates back to 1956, predicting weather and whatnot. And it started... Oh, this one's a good one. Okay. Wearton Willie started as essentially a party cover-up. So this guy, Mac McKenzie, was throwing a party. I have no clue who this guy is. This guy, Mac McKenzie, is throwing a party to show people his childhood home. He sends invitations all around town, invites all different kinds of people, and eventually one of them gets to a news reporter who, like I said, I have no clue who this guy is and why a news reporter showed up to the party. But he did, and he brought his camera equipment and everything. And after partying, and I can just see it, they're drunk and they're hanging out. And this news reporter is just like, hey man, if I don't bring a story back, I'm gonna have to pay for this entire trip out of pocket. Like, give me something that I can write about. So Mac McKenzie goes inside and he grabs his wife's fur hat, and it has a button, and he rips it off. And he goes out in the backyard in the snow, and he digs a hole, and he throws it in there, and he's like, Wearton Willie, that's our groundhog. Predicts weather. 6 more weeks of winter for you. So February 3rd, this reporter publishes in a paper that they have a groundhog there, and so he gets off scot-free. Everything's cool. The next year, people actually expected these festivities to happen, and they showed up to this guy Mac McKenzie's house, and were like, okay, so, what's happening? Like, where's Wearton Willie? And I guess they kind of they bought into it that it wasn't real, so they just kind of made it an annual tradition of just partying at this guy's house. And eventually, in the 1980s, they actually chose a real groundhog. They actually decided, maybe we should make this fake thing a real thing because everyone else is doing it. In 1999, however, Wearton Willie passed away, and they held a open casket funeral for all of his biggest fans to show up. They buried him in a tuxedo. They put coins on his eyes. They gave him a little carrot in his hands, and it was really nice. However, that wasn't Wearton Willie. He was decomposing already because he's a live animal, and I guess they didn't give him to the taxidermist quickly enough to preserve him so they could actually bury him. So they put a body double in for his own funeral. I'm guessing they just buried him in some unmarked grave somewhere because they had this stuffed one that they're probably going to show in a funeral burying it. Last up, we get the lesser mentioned groundhogs. I'm just going to read off a list of different groundhogs and where they represent, and that's about as much acknowledgement as you're going to get because you're not Punxsutawney Phil. You got Milltown Mel of of Milltown, New Jersey. Stonewall Jackson of Beamerville, New Jersey. Essex Ed and Otis the Hedgehog of West Orange, New Jersey. Great Neck Greta of Long Island, New York. Quigley of the Hamptons, Long Island, New York. Dunkirk Dave of Western New York. Jimmy of Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. Sun Prairie. Woodstock Willie of Woodstock, Illinois. Potomac Phil of Washington, D.C. Birmingham Bill of Birmingham, Alabama. Sir Walter Wally of Raleigh, North Carolina. The last 3 are in Vancouver, and it's Marlou, Chopper, and Van Isle Violet of Nanaimo. And those are actually the three of the only wild marmots, meaning they don't corral them or anything. They just kind of like, I guess they just know where they live and like, all right, he saw his shadow, so 6 more weeks of winter. In Nova Scotia, Groundhog's Day is known as Dax Day, or I'll just spell it right here. So those that know, you'll learn a little more. I'm going to give you one more close-up look of my little Punxsutawney Phil. I got him back in 2009. You got excellent lighting, I know. We're going to work on that in the future. But yeah, so he's holding a little copy of the Punxsutawney Spirit. I don't know who this little groundhog is. But yeah, that's Phil right there. So there you go. We're just going to say that that's Gus. I've seen the acting Punxsutawney Phil. I'm sorry. No. I've seen the real Punxsutawney Phil because there is only one. But yeah, if you couldn't tell, I absolutely love everything about the state of Pennsylvania. I grew up there. I went to college there. If I could afford, I would move back there, but that's not in the budget right now. If you would like to know more about really just anything in Pennsylvania, just drop a suggestion, put in the comments down there. I'm just starting up, so like and subscribe because I'm trying to do this in my free time. So I need to know if there's actual interest in what I'm doing, and until next time, insert new catchphrase here.